Jim Joyce. Happy Wednesday, my friend.
Happy Wednesday, man. Happy Wednesday.
We did get to actually catch up earlier in the week. That was a pleasant surprise. Not on our typical Monday catch up, but
Yeah,
I think it was, right. Was it this week or last week? I can't even keep track, man.
I think it was this week. I think we got some time in on Monday, but it may have been elsewhere. How was? I see you're back in the garage. Or were you in the garage last week?
I have to look. I actually do look if I'm wearing the same T-shirt last week or not. It was not, but no, I don't think I didn't look at the surroundings. But I am back to the garage. I got the little fan going. It's nice out, hot but nice. So
Right.
yeah, and then the big news, which made sense, and shout out to our old friends, Pablo Pantaleoni, Megan Jones-Bell, well, two Rachels, Clare Kennedy. I'm gonna keep name dropping. Marina loves that. Headspace and Ginger, right? The merger. I don't know who actually acquired who at the end, but did you see that news?
No, completely not. I'm in my own bubble.
I typically am, except I started getting texts and stuff.
Headspace,
if I've seen it.
Headspace,
sure.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal.
It makes sense, right? Because I mean, obviously there were individuals that driving this, Headspace health from a clinical perspective, and some of those names that I've sort of mentioned. While it's very much of a great mass media brand name, right? I mean, you got some superstars, et cetera. And I actually think, we talked about this in the show, from a mental health perspective, it's out in the masses. Everybody needs to understand it. We need to get this out. And I think this combination of the clinical rigor of Ginger, plus I think some good foundational components of that, plus the edutainment mass. I mean, makes sense, makes complete sense.
In the whole consumer, it's kind of, Headspace, I feel is a very consumer, facing proposition. Like there might be reimbursement for it, but you're generally paying for it yourself.
We'll find out. Shout out to DaMassa, who just released an hour or so ago the interview with both of the CEOs. So I'm sure we'll get more info on where they're going to the extent that they can disclose this. So
and then before we let our friend in here, when you were on stage with Glen at the Health Excel event, you asked him a question. So when I saw this whole Google Health disbanding there, or kind of siloing or their different health assets, didn't you talk about that on stage or?
No. So we didn't in our fireside chat, but I think Blake from Business Insider asked the question, and so the preview, or we'll direct our listeners and viewers to the full interview and the Q&A that will come out with Health Excel, I think Friday, and pieces of that. But the short version, it was great to be back in New York. It was great to be quote unquote on stage. It was great to finally dress up and put some pants on. So anyway, back to of course the wonderful gentleman who's joining us. And as I texted him, I said, Jim and I were catching up, and I thought we had you on, but realized we didn't. For full disclosure, I've known Tim Juergens, so joining in. I'm gonna enter him in right now.
Where's he calling in from?
We'll find out. I think Barcelona or Germany. So we'll see that in a minute. He's unmuting now. He's gonna unvideo himself. There you are, Tim. Welcome to the shot.
Hey, Tim. Hey, Tim. Nice to
meet you.
We've hung out together, Tim.
I think we haven't really had the chance so far, right? We need to get that into the agenda.
Pleasure to meet you. You look very tan. Are you in Barcelona right now, or are you coming in from?
Yeah, I'm in Barcelona, enjoying the time and the weather, and hopefully heading towards vacation next Friday, which is 2 days from now. So I'm counting the hours.
Nice, awesome.
Yeah.
So as I was letting you in, I was telling our millions of viewers and listeners that Jim and I were catching up and said, we thought we had you on, and that's, I think, when I texted you, and then realized we have not. And so, here you are, later than expected, but it is what it is.
Right.
So since Jim doesn't know you, and neither do maybe millions of our viewers and listeners, as I keep referring to the few and the dedicated. Tell us who Tim is. And, I know we met at Frontiers years ago. You were still wearing your pharma hat, so we had some commiserations going on, but I'll let you kind of describe yourself.
Sure. No, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. So, Jem, Eugene, it's a pleasure to be here. And I would have joined earlier, but also later. It's just great to hang out with you guys and be part of the journey. And to the question, who's Tim? Yeah, I would say I'm German born, European raised, and over the years I made my way into healthcare and through healthcare. Why through healthcare? Because I started within the let's say the healthcare industry, first pharma, and then quite a long journey in diabetes care within Roche that led me through all different kinds of countries and functions, and all on the commercial side. And before I got promoted to general manager, always trying to really bring let's say health innovation into that reality of big pharma, big diagnostics care processes, and succeeded in some of the country organizations doing that with health programs in the diabetes care space. Before then, I got the opportunity to move to Barcelona, yay, a company which was on my bucket list, and I finally could get into.
I second that, yay.
Yay, exactly. To set up the digital health hub together with my tech colleague on the other side for Roche Diabetes Care. And the background, of course, was like in many other companies in the space, it was high time to set up, let's say, the digital component to really leverage the value of health data in daily care processes, specifically for chronic care. So of course I was thrilled to have that opportunity from a business side. So that's what brought me to Barcelona, and we set up that hub here in Sant Cugat, close to the city. It's still thriving, and from there the digital health therapy approach and support processes are being designed and implemented across the different countries of the world, as far as you can standardize them, because some localization always is needed, as you know. Yeah, so that's my background. Happy to be here, and I spent my time like 50-50 between Spain and Germany as well.
Got it.
I thought you said 80-20. No, it's the 50% that we're not there right now.
Right.
Exactly. So now we are here. So you'll take over sometime soon, Eugene.
Yeah, hopefully very soon. But so maybe, and then now, we sort of reconnected again as I was leaving, the big pharma as well, and back again to Frontier. So kind of heads up to all the peeps watching, November 11th and 12th, Milan. I think I got the dates right. If not, Roberto and team will correct me. But you kind of said, well, leaving the big pharma, or left already, I think at the time, big pharma, and basically becoming a partner in a fund. And tell us a little bit on SeedLink. And full transparency, SeedLink is a lead investor in your coach as well. So in our seed round,
lead investor in you, coach. I must add.
That's even better. That's even better.
No, exactly. So we met over there, and I was probably already thinking about transitioning out of let's say big diagnostics. Why that? Big companies, of course, have the tendency to protect what's there, and that's always that challenge with a true innovation coming in. And I really wanted to spend, let's say, the second half of my professional life to give something back, and also to leverage the experience I have in the field. And where can you do that better than in, let's say, smart money investment? And the process for that was venture capital. And so we set up SeedLink here in Barcelona actually in January 2020. And that was coming with a very clearly defined investment pitch of going for digital health. And there, even more specifically, into digital therapeutics, digital biomarkers, and also platform-driven businesses like your coach, for example, and others. And we were of course, quite lucky to set it up at that point in time. It was good analysis of what was needed. CAGR was projected to be 30% on an annual base for the next 6 years. And what is more, you really can generate true health value for individuals. And you can, through those like 3 categories, really implement the digital, through digital health, if you like, the value-based healthcare philosophy at its best. And that was what we were looking at, because there's many pieces of innovation available, but what we really think in healthcare is needed is cost effectiveness, really need to be part of the game. Quality of life needs to be a true ruling element in innovation, and this whole concept needs to be supported also from where, let's say, the healthcare markets are going, and this is the case in the space. So that's why we set it up accordingly. And then, as you know, COVID hit, and I think that modified the growth expectations up, the adoption rates up, and totally messed up our budget with regard to investment opportunities, because we planned, I think, to do 4 that year, just to start slowly, and we did 11 in 2020.
Wow,
11 companies we are now invested in and try
Europe?
to actively support.
Yeah, Europe, US, early stage, seed.
Exactly. So early stage, pre-seed, seed.
All of the above.
Europe mainly, 2.5 companies in the US right now. One is moving at the point in time. So, and we really try also to help a little bit in that transition process wherever that's possible, because what we see pretty much, and probably saw even more before COVID, but still it's there, that funding in Europe goes to a certain point. There's great tech transfer. There's great pre-seed and seed funding in general terms. I'll come to that again in a second. And then whoop, it hits that glass ceiling, right? And either you make it to the US, or
raise money from your customers, right? Which I think some of the startups in Europe just been kind of hacking away at it. We brought that up from, I think the telemedicine platforms that were successful in raising money from customers, but then therefore raising money from investors, right? So,
yeah, exactly. This is what's happening, right? You have great opportunity to grow a healthy and really beneficial business in Europe as well. Just the unicorn growth stories to a biggest share you see happening in the US, and that is what I meant with the or. Yeah, or you build a healthy, beneficial business in Europe and see where this brings you subsequently.
Sorry, Jim, I was just making a comment. I was talking to another startup, and while I'm a startup co-founder myself now, I do enjoy talking to many startups a week. I still allocate my serendipity time, and it was a little bit interesting. It was not a European country again. I don't want to let's put it. It was in Canada, and they're saying, well, we want to enter the US, right? The reality is, while you physically no longer need to be there, if you really are serious about entering the US market, you need to live and breathe this thing, right? Like, I think some of these days of, well, let's just hire a biz dev or half a person, a quarter person, you're either all in or you're not, right? And so I think that a lot of, especially the reason I bring this up is a lot of the European startups are like, well, let's kind of play with it a little bit, but then you're diverting your efforts. You're not focused on, you either want to be kind of number one in your own country and then expand out, or you, to your point, you prove something small enough and then just hop over, right? I don't know. That's my 2 cents on it. I just think too many startups.
And the interesting bit is, I'm really curious to see how the platform play will develop specifically in the DTX and in the biomarker field, because great innovation to develop a certain biomarker or group of biomarkers or a specific indication-based set of DTXs. But then, how do you get that from that early adopter stage into full adoption, right? And what do we see in the space now? We see a lot of the big ones which just specced out, like Pear and others. They are building, right? They are building their portfolio from within and inorganically. So how will that journey go? And that's why I think I'm absolutely convinced, even if you're not going to go for the big game right away in that space, both biomarkers as well as DTXs, as long as you build a solution which is really making a true difference, and it's capable based on the outcome to qualify for risk sharing agreements and so forth, you're well set up to position that solution adequately.
We had a whole, sorry, Jim, I'll shut up.
No, I was wondering, do you see startups, just pulling up what you're saying, Tim, do you see startups do risk share agreements right away from like that early stage?
I see them considering that and trying to find out how they could best do that. And that's where you get this, let's say, that knowledge requirement in which normally is not really met at that early stage. I just hopped off a 3-hour mentoring session with a startup where we discussed exactly this point, right? And now, you know, if you're early enough, you can prepare that, you can prepare yourself with regard to good insights into the market and can check that as one of the potential commercialization routes in specific subgroups. I think this will happen more moving forward, to have earlier, let's say, very qualified discussions with in-market specialists to map out now those routes in a very specific way, rather than saying, hey, great DTX, here I am. I'll be the solution for each and every one everywhere.
Right.
Yeah, you know, and back a little bit to the platform, and you know, you mentioned Pear, right? I mean, in their SPAC slide deck, they even said, you know, we're a platform. Hey, come on board, right? If you have something. And you know, where we had this discussion in the last DTX meeting on kind of the employer market discussions, where, you know, in the drug world, I mean, that's been the challenge, right? Because we have, as individuals, comorbidities, right? And you're in drug 1 and drug 2, and you know, these pharma companies are then tackling on, you know, drug plus companions. And so, how do we, you know, do we see this happening with digital therapies? And my short answer is, unfortunately, I think yes, right? Because every one of them, and I think this is where Pear, for example, is trying to preempt it and say, hey, we want to be the front door to digital therapies, right? Prescribable, and come on, and you know, the user experience. I'm curious on both of you guys' thoughts on this, kind of comparing to the drug world.
Jim, do you want to go first?
Oh, I want to hear from you.
Right. You know, I think it will happen. It will need to go into kind of a platform play for several reasons. You have the network effects. You need those networks effects to really have both clinicians as well as patients utilizing a certain number of limited number of platforms for different purposes in life, and health is one of those. The second element in this is also the whole set of competences you need to build out, be it now the IP side or be it the regulatory side, and these elements, you'll need to leverage some synergies there. So that's also what I tell the startups we're working with, you know, be excellent in what you do, build out the best solution rather than trying to do everything at scale. It's great opportunity to add at a point in time to your point solution a clinic approach with some medical support. But do you need to build your own platform for that, or you rather go to your coach and work with them to build out things, or others, right? Mm-hmm. So there will be synergies coming in that triangle of digital therapeutics, biomarkers, and platforms, and rather better prepare upfront than you know, let yourself be prepared at a point when you don't want that.
I think about it, Eugene, like it's just this massive logistics challenge. You know, in some ways, like, you know, we have, like with my company, and we have a physical device that goes into the home. So that's an extra logistic challenge. But even independent of that, if you think about a digital therapeutic, it's like, I have to get access to your information. I have to somehow get into your phone. I have to somehow get into your doctor's way of reviewing records. I have to get into Medicare's reimbursement codes, or wherever that systems is. So there's this kind of, there's this art of this. And then in the whole process of that, I can't sacrifice user experience, you know, so you're in this kind of constant constraint around that. So you wonder, like when it take a company that tries to be a platform play and tries to be an actual digital therapeutic, the user experience challenge is mammoth, you know, and I think about like the debates we'll have around, you know, one element of this, you know, I think that's going to be one of the interesting things, because if it's not easy for these doctors and if it's not easy for these patients, then do we get the traction that we've seen, which is pretty nascent right now? The traction is pretty nascent at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think that, Sorry, in the traditional, I think, pharma world and, the drug plus and the companions, right? So design was never a part of the discussion, right? Like, and just thinking, I mean, I know, Jim, I still remember the day where you ran over to me in London when you just had the concept of Health Beacon, already thinking about what is that beautiful interface on touch and feel and how do you interact with it. We just at Yurko, we just reinvented the whole onboarding process in the last quarter, right? Because we kind of said, well, this shit ain't going to be good enough, right? Let's reinvent it. And so I think we're coming to where I think the DTX companies are looking at it from an experience perspective. I still think the healthcare core, the sick care part is still looking at it as an efficiency. And now the two worlds are kind of coming together. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents, but I'm rambling. I think I need a drink.
No, and I agree. Oh, that's a good idea for soon.
Yeah, I as an investor, I mean, it's for just 2 p.m. here, so I am ready with a bottle, but unfortunately I have calls till about 6. So.
I've got some hard seltzer here because it's 7 o'clock here in Dublin.
You need to prepare me better, really. Okay, so, I'll be prepared next time. No, but just one thought on what you just said on the platform play. I think it doesn't stop by building that more platform-oriented digital piece, but the next step somehow will be to bring those digital providers and brick and mortar together again. And I'm really curious to see who's taking over whom moving forward, looking at the valuations and the acquisition play they can do with stocks, specifically the digital side. So this will be the next interesting bit, which will also be needed from my perspective to fully leverage the power of digital.
Right.
So just as
meet individuals where they are at the end of the day, right? And I actually remember rewinding back to my old Medco Health PBM days where the model was, shipped to your door. And then we were kind of talking, I think at the time, if I'm not mistaken, CVS bought Caremark, right? So Caremark was a standalone, shipped to your door. And everybody's like, well, no, why do you need 2 stores or whatever? Well, guess what? Between the Evernorth and the CVS Caremarks, that footprint of retail or clinics it's still there because not everybody wants to be online or has access to it. So it'll be fascinating.
The big profitable useful businesses that thank God we had them, say, in the States, to deliver vaccines or to be there as a support system, right? Like it's they haven't gone anywhere. Everyone talked about them going away, but they haven't gone anywhere. But what do you think? Go ahead.
No. I was going to rewind back to get some gossip on pharma because we both, but go for it before we get there.
Let's go for some gossip. Let's go some gossip.
Did you have a thought on this? Because we can come back to this. I don't care.
Well, the thing, and we can pause on it, but we randomly bounce across thoughts here, Tim. This is the
meticulously unproduced.
But what I was thinking about was if I did 11 investments, right? I did 11 investments and I did them, I guess, at the beginning of what we've been going through over the last year and a half. This is kind of a COVID safe zone, Tim. But if we think about it, right, nice. But like building companies that all of a sudden have to change their operating models in terms of how they manage companies, how they interact with their customers, how they interact with investors, and seeing, and you sounds like your earlier stage, what was that like in terms of helping them, coaching them, keeping them on track?
The interesting bit in this is you're absolutely spot on. As we're pre-seed, we come in at that point where the others don't really dare to get in yet, and we can do that based on the experience. Eugene, our discussions on the stuff, right? So it's we have let's say a risk reduction by experience because we can compensate for some of the elements. My partner and I in this, and the process was, on the contrary, it was just an encouragement for digital health solutions as such. It was an ask for solutions to be digitally solved at the point in time when nobody could be physically attended. And there was a shortage of financial means because at the very early months specifically, the existing investors were, trying to find out where the ship goes. And supporting their startups they already invested in. So for us, to be really honest, I think it was part of an accelerator in that sense because of this perfect storm for a newcomer into the space with some deep experience and the willingness to take calculated risks, I would say.
Got it. So what's the gossip?
You calculated well.
So far, we are happy.
So far, so good. So I wanted to go back because I actually remember, and I did pause on my book writing, the Hard Pill to Swallow, because while, you know, my premise a bit was, yeah, it only takes an hour. We all know context and dedication and focus is key. And so I did my 19 chapters and I paused. But I do remember, I think in maybe newsletter number 2 or 3, I get an email from Tim and saying, hey, you know, happy to sort of contribute as somebody who's been on that journey for 15 plus years or something like that inside pharma. So
24.
24. Okay. Wow.
If you count pharma as well, yeah, it's crazy. My goodness.
Yeah. Just but
so if I turn like that,
were you like 7, dude?
Yeah.
Like 7? I said you were 7 years old when you started or something. I don't know. Anyway,
thank you.
So to the extent that, you know, obviously, I mean, we've talked many times actually with guests on here, right? I mean, I think I always preface it. I mean, you know, pharma's been going to continue saving lives and improving lives, and I think it works, right? And I always joked around to a certain extent that, you know, the fact that pharma is so successful with large margins is preventing them from being even more successful. That's kind of my summary of it all, right? When it comes especially to digital and digital experiences. Brands, functions, you know, navigating, like, you know, I know you were involved with My Sugar, you know, at the time, bringing that into kind of the Roche umbrella. To the extent, again, like, would love your thoughts and experiences through, and especially, you know, I did my 3.5-year stint in really one role. I know you've been from country to different functions, to different leadership roles. Give us the lowdown, man. I know it's a lot to unpack.
Sentences, one sentence. I'll let me get into that just briefly. I think what's the great thing in pharma and in diagnostics, supporting people at scale and systems at scale is to a degree in the way for early innovation, and for what is more, for implementing early innovation effectively into care processes. Why is that? Because of the limitations which are built into the system. If you have an organization with 20,000 people, just to say something, if you have a change process, it'll take 5 years. And it is about changing mind first, changing, it's AIDA in the end, right? Changing understanding, changing, let's say, the willingness to be part of the journey, the understanding of how that can happen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that is through all the different functions from research to sales in the end. And I went through several transitions in sales organizations to help them prepare for that next stage, which is not a big jump. It's just the next stage. And we see, take GDPR as an example. You build a digital business coming from, let's say, physically driven device disposable model, just to mention that. Your whole business is threatened by GDPR in that sense that if you do a mistake, you have to deliver like up to 4% of your annual sales. That's a healthy control mechanism.
Sure.
And you see that in that the consequence of that carefulness which needs to be there, also to protect that large numbers of practitioners and individuals and the system in the end. It leads to some limited speed in implementation, all these elements. And that's basically my lowdown. And that is also part of the reason why I said, hey, second half, you know, I let's say I take a few layers out of the setup. We have now the leanest organization I have ever had in my professional career. And that doesn't mean that we are not efficient. No, but we're looking at another field, and we help basically scale very early innovation to that point where it can be nicely fitted into that ecosystem and environment. The bigger companies, be it pharma, be it biotech or be it diagnostics are currently creating. All of them are building ecosystems. All of them build a data backbone. All of them set up their HCP and their patient-facing front ends. Now, into that, you will need to inject selected innovation pieces, be it DTXs, be it biomarkers, or be it selected specialized platforms into that. That's going to happen. Let's help big pharma and big Dia in that sense to thrive and where they're good at by providing some good tools and some OEM parts they can scale successfully in the systems and through the structures they have established.
I think it's wild. I mean, what a time to be coming in, with an early, I always felt like early stage might have suffered during this, times that we're in because it was one of those, preserving resources. Digital health has been around for a little while now. There's a lot of interesting companies out there to invest in. And there's so much attention in the market, right? So it's kind of hard to get attention if you're a seed investor. So I always thought, but it's great to see you doing, to going at it. But I don't think anyone, obviously no one thought of this digital health acceleration path we've been on. But the other thing is these public markets, like that must be wild for you, because when you were putting your fund together, you couldn't have contemplated, unless, you had a complete crystal ball, but you couldn't have contemplated the idea that you could SPAC out mergers and acquisitions, public markets, plus very robust, Series B markets and venture markets and private equity. How are you reacting to all that now? How's that changing the model versus when you set it up at first?
One word, accelerating. Just accelerating. In the first, as said, we wanted to build slow. We wanted to build with 4. We want the companies in the first year. We wanted to establish let's say solution in the market which meet a clearly defined unmet need effectively. So that was pretty much a safe bet in that sense, that at that pre-seed seed stage, quite a bit in that area can be judged early, and you can calculate that risk. Now the appetite for risk is increasing in the whole market. On the one hand side, I don't know how many funds have been newly established right now. Everybody wants to get into digital health right now. There in Germany, Holzbring has set up, I think in November last year, 60 million first closing, only digital, and a little bit of fintech. So it's quite a bit of appetite for growth and risk coming in that space, as the reward has been proven last year. For us, that means be even more selective, because the early stage prices are being driven up. Let me be neutral on that, and not necessarily the value is driving at the same point or at the same path. So we need to be even more careful. On the other hand, as the appetite is coming and the network effects of that specific investment focus are really proving out already now. We can really grow quicker than we thought originally, because the appetite for that specific segment of digital health is growing significantly, and the use cases as well.
I just want to maybe add to this, and obviously we were sort of in the midst of that, the C-19 hit, right? And I would kind of say, even not as an entrepreneur looking at this, March, April, May, everything was kind of like, holy crap, what do we do, right? The whole world really, and this is more US focused from a March perspective, right? But I think then it quickly stabilized. And again, back to this, I think, Tim, you mentioned earlier on, smart money, not the kind of follow-ons we need to get into this, but the smart money, I think, also realized, and this is back to the early stage, that the best innovations, inventions, and businesses are built during the hardest times, right? If you look at some of the great companies were built at Great Depression, right? The dot-com bust generated a whole other. So I think we're going to see this, and this is why I think we've actually did see quite a lot of, I remember this, decisions were made by, a lot of VCs were out there and saying, hey, from application to whatever, we'll let you know within 3 days, right? They were making deals. The fact that, we, Tim and team took risk actually in March, April, right? As this thing hit. So I think this is the dynamic, and I think we're going to see much more. On top of it, we now have the seasoned entrepreneurs that came from pharma insurers, have raised hundreds and millions, built the companies, et cetera, and are going to do it again. So I think this whole space is just ripe for early innovation, ripe for follow-on innovation, ripe for, I don't like to use the word disruption, but I think reinvention.
I think if we were to fast forward, what we're all going to have to reconcile is expectation on traction of the actual products, going into the marketplace, and even our own, even my own mindset of like, as we bring a product into the market, it's like, what should my KPIs or my goals be in the first quarter, the first month, the first year? When I enter a new market, it might just be, getting relationships with a key German insurance provider that could lead to a pilot. And that might be the right expectation for 9 months or something, right? You know what I mean? Which sounds, if you're a tech investor, that sounds very painful, right? Like that sounds like a very painful, but you can look at it and say, hey, no one's gotten an insurance contract in less than 9 months. So why should you have an expectation that you're going to get an insurance contract in 2 months,
Absolutely. And helping a little bit with the expectation management, be a good, healthy, friendly challenger internally before you get challenged externally, right? These elements are extremely helpful. Or just make a little phone call and tell your boss from like 10 years ago that the big black book is needed to call a few health insurance companies. So this kind of stuff, I think, makes a big difference. And if you go into it a little bit more pragmatically, and I hope we can still do that in a few months from now, a little cliffhanger. Then you really can make a difference. But if you see what you can do, let me just show you one thing. Right? Do you see that? You know what that is?
That's
blood pressure.
Blood pressure. Yeah. This is the new way of measuring blood pressure. You don't need your cuff anymore. 3 times measurement, calculating the average, and then put it into a white piece of something. You take your phone, you video your fingertip, and you have a clinically accurate blood pressure monitoring on the go wherever you are. That's Biospectral, where we were a lead investor earlier this year. They just closed their 4 million seed round, and it's just so clear that it needs to be there. It's so clear that every digital health provider, basically remote monitoring provider, needs to have something like that, and not some technical device which is artificially linked into. So this will be the next stage, and we will see this kind of moving from classical way of capturing biomarkers to a digitally enhanced way, and then it's only one step further to apply the algorithms to identify early also the let's say the findings and initiate the relevant treatment earlier than it can be done today. So it's so obvious that it needs to happen.
Our friend Sridhar, you must know Sridhar from Misfit Wearables and now doing Elemental. He always says, like, he's been a data kind of company builder for generations now at this stage, but it's always some data is better than no data. And that's if you think about, that's been kind of the battle of adoption in some cases is, I want perfect data, or do you want some data, and some data might actually be the difference between helping someone or not,
Absolutely.
Yep. Early warning signs even, right? So, and again, back to, I love the fact that it's clinically validated, but even, there were solutions on the market that were not, but, from a self-help, self-identification, and we always say at your coach, like, put your own mask on, right? Self-help is actually important. And so,
awesome.
Jim, I'm just watching the timing. I think this is now, we can keep unraveling more into pharma. We didn't get to talk that much about it, which is okay. We've spent enough time there. So, do you want to go for your famous?
Sure. So picture yourself a young German former pharmaceutical executive that just left big pharma and decided to move to Barcelona to get some sunshine, and you've come up with a brilliant idea to set up a new digital health company. What advice would you give that young executive becoming his first-time entrepreneur?
Find your right alter ego first. Yeah, find that individual you'll be able to build everything with, and have a few good beers in the evening, right? So complement your skill set in that sense, and spend some time on really challenging your idea, and then have friends challenge your idea, and then have somebody knowledgeable challenging your idea, and get some let's say well-networked individuals very early in the process before you found, and then get the right ecosystem set up. Like in Barcelona, I would tell people, get into the Barcelona Health Hub first. You'll find all those friendly founders, which can be your sparring at this early stage, and you'll find the investors, and they will link you into EIT Health, and you'll get a good sparring. That's probably what I would give as advice to such a young Tim, just at the verge of founding something great.
Awesome.
The alter ego.
I would tell him, to the not that young one anymore, go out and share your experience and set up a venture firm. No.
Yeah.
There you go. Perfect.
You're definitely the first one. Get an alter ego to challenge your ideas and have a few beers with. I love it. I love it.
We will need to cut all these. I think if I'm remember correct, there Edward Cliphouse challenged us a bit on this. So
yeah, definitely.
The summary of the 70+ people. Awesome. Well, right before the holidays, thank you for joining us. I'm excited for you to go on a holiday, and then hopefully see you back when you get back in Barcelona.
That's how we do it. It was a pleasure to be with you guys. Thanks a lot for now, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
Auf Wiedersehen.
To all of those, to all those watching, hit that subscribe button and share us out.
Awesome.